Hey all, Reed here with Big Strong Book, here to talk about The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis. This is the third novel in the Chronicles of Narnia in publication order, the fifth chronologically. And it is one that I have had almost no memory of going into this, beyond just they're sailing off to islands and adventure awaits. And that was kind of what I remembered about it. I don't even think I have ever seen the film adaptation from about 15 years ago, which was the final one of that. I think it was Walden Media that produced that what ended up being just like a little trilogy of Narnia movies. I've of course seen Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe many times. After I read Prince Caspian last year, I watched that movie, which that was another one that I wasn't sure if I had ever actually seen the Prince Caspian film, and it was pretty good. Definitely could have been a lot shorter. They added, that whole there's a whole castle action sequence which is not in the book. They just added it, I'm sure, to sell more toys because they'll I think that they had a toy of that set piece from the movie. That's what it was all for. That movie did not need to be over 2.5 hours long. Anyways, Voyage of the Dawn Treader. It's a different feel right off the bat. We have two of the Pevensey children, Edmund and Lucy this time around. Not really any Peter and Susan to be found. And of course their cousin Eustace, who is, I want to say, useless for at least certainly the beginning of the book. He's that annoying cousin that you just wish would shut up, and you just want to reach into the book and just slap him across the face. But Eustace, of course, I mean, as one would expect in these kind of portal fantasy journeys, Eustace grows, he changes, and he gets much better by the end. And so the essentially the plot of this book is Edmund, Lucy, and cousin Eustace. They get pulled into Narnia, pulled in the ways that they travel to Narnia are, of course, different in each book, or in each installment. We have in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe when it is the wardrobe. In Prince Caspian, Caspian sounds the horn, and they are transported back while they're in an underground station. And in this, they're looking at a portrait of a sea and a ship, and they get kind of pulled into the painting. The painting kind of subsumes their reality, and they wake up in the middle of the ocean, and then they're picked up by the Dawn Treader, which is captained by King Caspian, of course, becoming king at the end of Prince Caspian. And he is on a voyage into the east, to the end of the world, to find whatever happened of these seven lost lords of Narnia, which, if I remember correctly, and I will admit, with this book, I read the first half of it a little while back, and then just recently read the second half. And so the setup for why Caspian is out here, obviously I know he wants to find the lost lords, but why the lords went lost, if I remember correctly, they were fleeing from Miraz, who was the predecessor of Caspian's, and whom he overthrew, essentially, in the course of the story, Caspian being the rightful heir and Miraz kind of taking usurping that. But anyways, it is a quest in a very interesting sense, in the way that the other two were not. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian were about the Pevensey children coming into Narnia at a time of great need. More so in Prince Caspian. I mean, in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the world had kind of gone into a standstill with Aslan had faded, and Jadis, the white witch, had grown to prominence. But regardless, they all came in to solve this great crisis. And with the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, our three characters come into the world, and it's more like a time of self-discovery, in particular for Eustace, and Lucy, but ultimately for all three of them. And and this book is it makes me intrigued to eventually get around to watching the film adaptation, because this is a very episodic story as they kind of go through these groups of islands. Sometimes they might, run into a slaver kind of land that is formed in this island, which is where they find the kind of their first great lord. But then they go on, they discover these lands that are somewhat uninhabited, or they get signs of these lords that might have died and what happened to them. There's a Eustace, and I might just talk about this generally in terms of spoilers. Obviously, this book has been out for I think over 70 years. So it's been out for a very, very long time. The adaptations have been out for a while. So Eustace, they obviously go to an island. And the start of Eustace's character arc or progression, as he mellows, he learns to trust those that he's with more. It kind of humbles himself a little bit. He's very stodgy and holier than thou until he is turned into a dragon. And they realize it is him, but then he turns back into it after having that conversation with Aslan, where he must literally strip away the dragon for the boy within to emerge, and then to be changed, to grow. And that's a wonderful little moment. And we get a lot of Aslan kind of coming in and out. The influence of him still remains quite readily, and there are a lot of touching moments, in particular with the character of Reepicheep within this, especially with where Reepicheep ends up, kind of being not necessarily the sacrifice, because it is something that he wants entirely, to go off into that which is completely unknown, to really seek that out. Reepicheep shines in a way that I don't think he even did in Prince Caspian, and if this is indeed the last time we ever see him. There are the moments too, the great moments where Lucy, she begins to have that inward reflection and thought about maybe some poor character qualities and traits that she might have when she's in that magician's fortress, trying to make what becomes the Dufflepuds, to make them visible again. And she has the spell, of course, to say great beauty, but I believe she says the spell, but nothing happened. She has those great conversations with the magician. And then later on, when they get to that island where the remaining lords are kind of around this dinner table and they have been turned into stone, and even previously when they were, it's the great little moments. And so when you get to the end, I mean, literally you get to the end of the story when they're at the end of the world, and you're able to really reflect back on this, because this is about the characters really confronting the more unsavory aspects of themselves, in which they all do when they're in that cone or path of darkness, whatever you want to call it, in a place where at one of the lords, that they realize it is one of the lords that they kind of pick up and bring aboard, but that he says that this is the place where dreams come true, but not in a great way. It really dreams that speak to the that complete unsavory character, but they're able to get past that. And then when they go to that stone island, and then the remaining lord, who's still kind of out of his wits' end, chooses to sleep in the stony visage of his comrades rather than go on living if they could not. And then there's the interesting implications of these star characters who are a star, aren't a star, what are they, that inhabit some of these lands, or former star, retired stars. It's an interesting little panache and touch that I don't think is, I mean, the closest I can think of is maybe the character of Father Christmas, of I mean, Santa Claus in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, in that kind of weird way. He just kind of shows up and is able to provide them with gifts. But then they say that the only way for these lords to kind of come back to life is if you make it to the end of the world, but you leave somebody behind, somebody who will kind of go on and stay there. And then there's even a lot of debate too as to whether or not they should do this, or whether or not they should go on. There's a lot of great inner debate that kind of happens at the end. But then finally, when they get to that end of the world, where kind of the water comes up in the form of an endless wave, and Reepicheep, he carries on, and they've reached the end of the world. They've changed. And I'm trying to even think back into Edmund in particular, because obviously the mind goes to Lucy and Eustace in the case of this book, and how they change through all these episodic moments to kind of literally get to the end, and then they're able to look back, changed because Aslan then changes them and then sends them, obviously in a perhaps not so subtle allegorical way, that in your world I am known by another name. Well, take one guess to figure out who Aslan is referring to. And I get that can be a sticking point for some people, that C.S. Lewis does not. He makes it very obvious, kind of the parallels and the ties. I like it. I like what he's going for. I like the intent behind it, of this, really turning into that kind of a Christian moral tale. I'm not opposed to that by any means. Some people might be, but it's a very touching moment. It is perhaps the most in a different way. You have the ending of the ending of Prince Caspian honestly escapes me at the moment, but the ending of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, of course, when they have aged in Narnia, they have grown, and then they exit the wardrobe, and then to find that they have turned into children again, and how jolting and depressing. But then this is they are sent with a purpose. They know that they will reach Aslan's country someday. They know that end is not in store for them yet. Reepicheep has kind of, he's fought the good fight, and he's going off on that journey, but the journey is not for all yet, but they still have to seek it, which is it's a lovely little ending to this. And it's tough to figure out where. I mean, Prince Caspian, I think, improved upon Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in a lot of ways. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe itself is a great book. And then in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, this very well might be they might be improving one by one, just because this is much more of a introspective book. There's more going on, I think, beneath the surface than there were in the other books, just with the intent that the children are kind of transported to Narnia. It is not necessarily, I think, to help, even though one could argue that the Voyage of the Dawn Treader would not, I mean, the voyage in the book, not the book itself, but that the journey would not have been successful had it not been for them. And that there's arguments certainly to be made for that, but that it is it is a physical voyage, but it is also a great interior voyage. So it is the essence of quest in a fantasy mind, in a fantasy lens. So it's great. It's wonderful. I don't know when exactly I will read and move on to The Silver Chair, which is interesting because even though I read it years and years and years ago, I have absolutely no even visual, in terms of a film adaptation, frame of reference in my mind to go with. But Voyage of the Dawn Treader, if you have read it, let me know what you think. And as always, I will see you guys next time.